Well, great. Well, thanks for having me here. First of all, I want to thank David and the entire Yole team for inviting me to speak. I'm very transparently feel like this is more of a conversation and a discussion than me speaking. I'm always up for talking about topics that are near and dear to my heart. And this whole concept of slowing down and being present in the moment is something that comes up for me regularly right now. And I'll share maybe some examples that I've seen of why I feel like this is really top of mind for me. I have been a longtime fan of Yole. I've been on Yole retreats, have done events. I think it is really amazing what they do, and I'm always excited to participate. One of the things that I do when I'm trying to go through and kind of navigate stressful situations is to try to be in community with like-minded and supporting people, and Yole is for sure one of those communities. So thank you very much for having me. A little bit about me. I am a military brat. I grew up moving around the world, left the States when I was about 5, came back when I was about 15, grew up in Europe, and then moved around quite a bit. But I came to the Bay Area in 2000 and never looked back. And so I've been living here for 20 years, specifically in San Francisco for 20 years. And I just recently moved to Oakland, which has been a big deal. And I'm very excited about that move and just kind of a new adventure there. I have worked in the technology space for that time. I feel like technology just kind of swooped me up when I moved here. It's kind of what it does. And specifically, I work in the space of customer experience and customer success. So everything around companies who have subscription as a service models and focusing on customer retention. So those business models rely really heavily on retaining your existing customers and really building on that to drive growth and profitability. And another topic for a different conversation is, I think customer success and retention, that space is really one that companies are needing to focus on right now. I happen to be with Salesforce during the 2008 downturn and have seen firsthand how companies who really focus on customer experience of their existing customers during times like this can actually come out of these phases much stronger. So it's just, it's going to be really interesting to see how businesses navigate this time as well. My goal for this session, what I would just want to say also is this Yole Work from Home Wellbeing series is something that I think is also really crucial for these times. And I want to thank again, I think I thank you, David, for doing this. I am really excited to see some of the other presenters. We have Francesco Barbera, who's going to be presenting tomorrow. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that. But I think that, my intention for this particular call is to really be in conversation. The topic I can bring up, and I think I don't necessarily feel like I'm the expert, but I feel like what I can share is my own personal experience as we are all kind of trying to navigate this situation, both individually and collectively. And so I can share some of my thoughts there. And I guess, from a very vulnerable perspective, just some context for me, I think everyone is kind of going through this experience on their unique journey. Everyone's having kind of a unique experience based on their individual circumstances. Mine in particular has been kind of interesting. I am at a point in my life where I really am very much focused on community and connection and strengthening those types of bonds. And my move from San Francisco to Oakland was really driven by that. So I actually bought a home in Oakland with the intent, and I've been living in a 500 square foot space for the last 11 years. And the home for me was really a way for me to build community and entertain and be able to have a space where people could comfortably come and stay. And that was really a goal of mine. And I actually moved in 2 weeks prior to the shelter in place taking effect. So it's been really interesting timing, both from the standpoint of like, now I'm in this huge home with, well, huge compared to where I was living, but, and all of the ideas that I had around entertaining and kind of socializing and having friends and family come visit, all of that is on hold. So that has been definitely something that I've been working on with respect to attachment, attachment of ideas and expectations. And so that's one thing that I'm navigating. And then the other thing that kind of happened at the same time is I started my career at Salesforce. I then kind of launched my own business around customer experience and customer success. But I was lured back to the corporate environment last year to WeWork. And I was lured by a few things. I think moving into a company that was in an industry that I knew nothing about was really fascinating to me. I knew nothing about real estate. And so being able to bring my expertise around customer success to that space was a kind of personally a goal of mine. I'm always looking to learn and grow. But WeWork, for those of you who are following the story, was expected to be this amazing rocket ship, and things went slightly sideways. They are really struggling right now, and I'm in the process of exiting and looking for my next role. So between the home purchase, the expectations around community and social, and trying to reinvent myself with a new kind of chapter in my career, all in the era of coronavirus, that's my story. And so that's my current story, I should say. And it's just the beginning. So we'll see how it pans out. But I think I share that because as I talk to friends and families and new neighbors that I'm meeting, it's really humbling to see how everyone is kind of having their own unique experience through this. And it only reminds me that we truly are in this together, and we really should do the best that we can to be there for ourselves and for each other. And so that's really the theme of my conversation today that I want to bring up, is how do we take care of ourselves and how do we take care of each other? One thing that I just kind of want to highlight that has been interesting for me to observe, and this is again with examples that I've just seen pop up with friends and colleagues, is this idea of everyone kind of trying to maintain the same level as we were in this time, whether it's, keeping the household together or work performance or whatnot. And so I have recently been talking about how we just need to lower the bar. And I was initially going to title this session something around that. And the reason why I didn't is I just want to open it up for a question, and feel free to unmute yourself to chime in if you'd like. But what comes to mind for you when I say the phrase, we need to lower the bar?
What, trying to get everything done?
Sorry?
What, trying to get everything done?
Mm-hmm.
Balance.
Balance, okay.
I've heard people use the phrase, this is the great pause.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. So when I talk about that, and I think sometimes I always say words are important, choose your words wisely. And sometimes I maybe don't always, but I initially was talking about the idea of lowering the bar, meaning we need to kind of maybe be kinder to ourselves. And that was the intention of me saying that. But the way that it was received with some of the conversations that I was having was really that there was like more of a negative connotation around that. Like, no, we can't lower the bar. And it just what it brings to mind for me is that we are so programmed towards productivity and achievement and efficiency and all of this stuff that it's just very surprising to me that in the era that we're in right now and the crisis that we're dealing with right now, people still find it very difficult to slow down a little bit and reassess. And I'll give you some very specific examples that came up for me. So in one instance, I have a close friend who is a pediatrician working on the front lines with patients. here in Oakland, and her administration has been pushing very hard for them to maintain the number of patients being seen on a daily basis. And if you think about the context of the business model actually trying to shift to telecalls and telehealth, and healthcare isn't all healthcare organizations aren't really able to do that as effectively. So there's one example where administration is really just focused on the numbers, but there's this whole aspect of just logistically, how do you get that done? Not to mention, the emotional component of being less focused on the numbers and more focused on actual well-being of the patients that you're seeing. So there's one example that came up for me that I just thought was kind of fascinating. Another example is a good friend of mine. I don't know how many of you have children. I don't have children. I have 3 nieces and nephews, godchildren. I'm surrounded by a bunch of examples, but I have a girlfriend who is obviously everyone's kids are being homeschooled right now, and are doing school virtually, I should say. And the teacher kind of sort of reprimanded the mother, my friends, saying, well, the assignments that we send to you on a daily basis really need to be completed in that day. And my friend's comment was, well, that she was kind of spent by 2 p.m. And this is, for context, for a 5-year-old. So, and again, I've talked to other friends of mine who are also teachers, where they're frankly being pushed to kind of operationally shift gears and still try to maintain the same standards. And so I bring these examples up because I just think that, there are others. I have friends and family who are really just trying to, between the cooking and the cleaning and the this, and still kind of doing it all and juggling everything on top of everything that's being piled on, at home. I bring these up because I am, constantly, I feel like I have an immediate reaction to, we have to maintain that same standard. I don't think that it's possible. And I don't think that it's, personally, I don't think that it's very healthy to try to do that. And so I think a lot about, having compassion for ourselves and for others during this time. And I would just say, lastly, not to mention just, what we're trying to navigate based on what's on our plate already. But then you have another element of, oh, hey, here's a really great time to even up your game. So maybe set a professional goal, or maybe set a personal goal, or learn a new language, or get really fit, or use all this time to become a better version of yourself. And I'm not suggesting that that's bad in and of itself. I do think, though, that it's important to really think about what's the intention behind that. I have a really wonderful, amazing friend and colleague who I worked with at WeWork and now consider him a friend, Robin Daniels, who was the CMO at WeWork. And he is Danish, and he is, we always joked with him that he was always annoyingly happy every single day. And if you follow him on LinkedIn or social media, you'll see what I mean. He is just one of those people that is just, wow, he's an inspiration, but I'm also how do you do it? And so I think that sometimes it's easy for us to kind of get wrapped up in trying to kind of hit that same bar, that same standard that maybe other people have, and that comes more natural to them. So this all comes back to just a point of compassion. I think that the reality that we're living in is one of general ambiguity. And I don't think that we recognize that enough, that low level of kind of stress and ambiguity is really something that permeates our thinking and our emotions on a daily basis. I think for every one of us, this is as far from normal as anything that we've ever seen. We're watching the situation literally unfold and evolve and change on a daily basis, and we don't know how long it's going to last. And so that, I think, just brings me back to this idea of, what can I do? What do I have that's within my control to navigate this current circumstance? And so with that, I talk a lot, and because my point around this is just the compassion for ourselves is really this idea of being in the present moment and slowing down enough to recognize kind of what's going on within ourselves so that we can actually be there for others. You know, Chip Conley, again, who's another speaker that's going to be in the series, he wrote an article called After Social Distance Comes Social Wellness. And he talks in that article about wellness as a shared responsibility, which I love that idea. And it really resonates with me because I just naturally have a tendency to want to be there for others. So when I'm talking to friends and neighbors or family or colleagues who are struggling, I do have a natural tendency to want to be there for others. What I have learned, however, is that I need to make sure that I am resourced myself in order to be able to do that effectively. Otherwise, it actually has a pretty negative effect on me. And so, you know, my strategy for going through this experience is first to really try to understand and create some empathy for what the other individuals are going through. And then secondly, I kind of have my own self-care routine, which I would love to share and would love to hear kind of what some of your strategies are as well. The first piece around really seeking empathy and tapping into that empathy is this concept I think we're all familiar with, is seeking to understand. I think one of the biggest areas where this comes up for me as something that I'm constantly working on is very specifically in the area of when I see others, whether it be close family or friends, frankly, or no one that I even know, but maybe see on the street, not following the social distancing guidelines as I think they should be, or as I understand them to be. And this is actually, I think, coming up for myself and a lot of individuals that I'm speaking with, where I'm finding myself feeling a lot of anxiety just being in a social setting because I don't know if everyone's going to. And when I say a social setting, it's, you know, running errands or whatnot, but I don't know if they're going to be following those same standards. And I also have a close family member who is not following the standards as I believe they should be. And I struggle with that. And I think that what helps me in those situations is really to try to understand where the other person is coming from to the extent that you can. So with a family member, really trying to dig in there as opposed to lecture, which can be a little bit of our tendency sometimes, I think, or to judge, which is I definitely do as well. You know, but there's an element of, you know, the lifestyle that she has is different than the lifestyle that I have, or the family structure that she has is different than the family structure that I have. So I think this idea of really trying to understand where the other individual is coming from, it's not to say that it's okay, but it does give you some perspective on why they're making the decisions that they're making. You know, I'll give you another example where you can't always seek to understand, and you sometimes have to let it go. I was at the gas station the other day getting gas, and there was an individual who had no mask, was on his phone, and was blocking the entrance to the gas station. So I asked him to move over, and he kind of huffed and wasn't sure why I was doing that, and he kind of stepped to the side a little bit, and I asked him to move over for the 6 feet distance. And as I was going back to my car, he yelled, "You should stay home." And so, you know, in that situation, you don't understand, you're not going to stop to understand, but I think you can have compassion and realize that, you know, stress really does make people lash out and makes people behave in very different ways. And I think you can't always necessarily be in that space where you have control over the other person's behavior. But at the end of the day, I think I always come back to just compassion. And that's kind of what I try to do in that instance. And then the second area that I really focus pretty heavily on is on the self-care component. And this is probably one that I think we all have, you know, very interesting examples around. But, you know, I think that the great pause, Michael, I think you brought up the great pause. I don't think I had heard about that, but I think it's a really interesting idea. Yes, we do have a lot more time at home, but what's interesting is I think when you have like a family, the actual time that you have to yourself is probably not as luxurious as you would normally have on a regular schedule. But there's a handful of things that I do personally that help me kind of navigate these situations. First and foremost, I always say find some sort of an outlet for your feelings and your emotions. So whether it's journaling, I love the idea of journaling. Every single time I do it, it makes me feel great. I don't do it, David, you probably heard me talk about this. This is the little inner judge. I don't do it as often as I should, but but I do it. I do it when I'm really stressed out, or I'm really overwhelmed, or I'm really working with something, or I'm just really angry or frustrated. And there's something about getting it out of my body and onto the paper that is really cleansing in so many ways. Or talking to friends, or therapy, or whatever it is that you're doing. So I think that's kind of one thing that I think is really important. So not holding it in and finding some sort of an outlet for it. If you're artistic, maybe finding an outlet that way. I think another aspect that I think is really important is the social media components. I'm actually, before I kind of share my thoughts on that one, I'm curious to hear, how are you all using or not using social media during this time? Or does anyone have like a set intention or approach to how they're interfacing with social media right now?
I love funny dogs. I can't
You love-
help it. Funny dogs, especially German Shepherds or Golden Retrievers.
I love it.
That's my extent of Instagram.
Oh God, Michael, that's so perfect. We'll have to talk offline. I just got a puppy, a shepherd mix, and she cracks me up on a daily basis.
I was trying to bring my dog into the frame for you, Michael, but I
have found that I've used social media, well, LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter, more in the last 2 months than in the last 5 years.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
It's become basically a way to reach out and connect to people, and if it gives me an opportunity to say, hey, do you want to get on a video chat, and we can to talk about what's going on and how it's impacting you, and kind of help each other make sense of the world right now.
Yeah.
So it's been kind of just a way of reaching out and connecting and using that as a means to invite conversation.
Oh, great. That's wonderful. Anyone else?
Yeah, I mean, it's been mostly the main interaction that I've had with my friends has been through social media. A lot of times communication is through Instagram messages more so than even texting now, or like leaving voice memos on Instagram, or just sharing different short videos or pictures, just to help us connect or find a laugh. And then I've also been using it just to help share and spread, this mindfulness language and mindfulness in general on my social media to, help support folks and give mindfulness a face in these times. So I've found that it is crucial for connection in my community.
Oh gosh, it's really great. This is actually why I wanted to hear from all of you, because I feel like, my again, I think the use of it is very unique to individuals, but I do think there's maybe like there's a way that people could use it that could have, you know, negative implications. I think if you're using it as a way to connect, yes, that's the way to do it. Whether it's dialoguing over the platform or potentially, Brian, it sounds like you're using it as a way to kind of connect with individuals and get more on a video chat, like more on a live conversation. So I think there are definitely healthy ways to do it. I personally, it's really interesting. I feel like with so much kind of Zoom and FaceTime happening, we talked about the screen time, you know, earlier a little bit. I get screen fatigue, and I actually find that my use of social media and even texting during these times is really low. So I generally prefer phone calls or FaceTime or something like that, that kind of allows you to kind of have that live environment. But, you know, Jason, to your point, does anyone, actually, I'm curious, does anyone know about SGN, John Krasinski's Some Good News? David, have you heard of it?
I've definitely heard of it, and I've been meaning to watch it, but I haven't watched it yet.
Oh
But he's a big star in my house with my kids, though.
My family finally got me to watch the first 2 videos yesterday, so it's a very recent discovery for me.
Yeah, I guess, you know, for me personally, I think there's a lot of kind of like snarky stuff that gets passed around over social media. Like which version of quarantine are you? And I don't know, I guess I personally seek out much more positive messages. And so SGN or puppy videos or whatnot, I think are really great. But I think the other thing that I'm sure, you know, you're all aware of, but I feel like with social media, I can also fall into this trap of, you know, comparing myself to others, or, you know, looking at others who are like, oh, I just did this like HIIT class at home with other people. I don't know. It's just this element. So I feel like there's a balance to be had with the social media component. And I think that while it could be generally in the same category, I'm actually putting news in its own category. I know a lot of people who bookend their days with news. It's the first thing they read in the morning, and it's the last thing they read when they go to bed. I am going to just say that I'm in the camp of that can't be good for your brain. And it's not a point of judgment if that's anything that that you need to do. I think it's important to definitely be informed. But again, along the lines of just managing the messages that you're receiving. Unless you're actively, I feel like when I go look for news, I'm looking for positive stories, which is why SGN is such a great resource. But the news generally is negative. And so I just think it's important to kind of put that in its own box as well and limit your time on that one. I will apologize. My puppy's waking up.
I have another recommendation for some, you know, positive news.
Yes.
TED has started doing daily interviews that they live stream and record. And TED, Chris
Oh.
of TED, you know, TED.com.
Yes.
So like last Saturday, I watched a recording of him talking to Elizabeth Gilbert, and how she's reframing the quarantine. And she says,
nice.
like there was one of my favorite takeaways was she was quoted as saying, or she said, I don't think of it as quarantine. I think of it as a retreat. And it's just, you know, and she has a very strict, you know, limitation on her media consumption as far as news.
Oh yeah, I think that's a big one. I mean, again, David, I know you have a lot of resources to bring to bear on the neurological effects of all of this stuff, but I think news is definitely in that category of, you know, just maybe needing to kind of maintain it and manage it and limit it to a certain extent. I've been joking that, I mean, I literally go on 100% news hiatuses. That's a word, plural. And the reality is I'm not uninformed. Why? Because I hear about it from friends and family. So I think that however you decide to manage it is up to you. Another thing that I think is really important is just moving and resourcing your body. There's David, did you have a somatic? I feel like did you have a somatic?
We've had a few actually. Yeah.
Okay.
But
so I won't go down that path.
No,
I mean,
please
I'm
do.
sure there's a ton of, I'm actually going to have to go back and look at the recordings for some of those. I do believe that that's extremely helpful, both moving your body and resourcing it. And so, you know, for me, yoga, meditation, I love to cook. So, you know, feeding your body, spa time, things like that is really important. Even for the men, a little face mask, a little manicure, pedicure. And then the last thing is really, and this is, I will say personally, this is probably one of my biggest personal challenges right now is the physical space component. And as I mentioned, I'm very jealous of your background, David, being in the backyard. But I think having moved into the home a couple of weeks prior to shelter in place and everything kind of going on lockdown, as you can see, I have no artwork up. I don't have my office set up. There are no rugs in the home. It's very echoey. It's just an interesting personal experience because it's made me realize how much physical space is critically important. That being said, I have a backyard and, you know, it is a wonderful space, I guess, to be sheltered in place, but I think physical space is really important. So whether it's arts, whether it's, Michael, it sounds like you're cleaning out your office and kind of redesigning that, which is great. You know, lighting, pictures, etc. I do believe those things are really, really important. So, you know, with that, I feel like I just want to open it up and see if there are other things that you're doing to resource yourself during this time.
I'd
Yes, sir.
love to take a moment to plug some of the work that my colleagues and I started this week, which is, if you haven't heard, the US Department of Agriculture has allocated $3 billion to buying food from farmers and warehouses within the food chain and providing that food to food banks and other nonprofit organizations. In fact, when I stepped out about an hour and a half ago for lunch, Governor Newsom was talking about that exact same thing here in California. There are a lot of people, especially in places like New York and Detroit, where we're helping to just make the connection. There's food that's stuck in warehouses because it can't get to the end destination, which would have been restaurants. It's already prepackaged, it's frozen, it's ready to go, and there are a lot of hungry people out there. So we are taking the opportunity, and all we're doing is making connections with people we work with, people we know. So if any of you are interested or know somebody who works with a food bank or other nonprofit anywhere across the country, and you want to send a note to me on that, I'm happy to try to make a connection to get a local food distributor connected with them and make that happen.
Michael, I definitely want to hear more about it. I just signed up to volunteer with an organization here, the construction, called Extra Food, extrafood.org, which is just what the name implies, where I'll be helping transport, you know, and make the connection. Maybe there's some sort of linkage there.
Yes, let's absolutely talk.
Nice, I love that. It's amazing. I'm glad they're doing that with all the stories of food going to waste. It's been horrible.
Yeah, I actually, it was a slightly out of date. I want to say it was 2018 podcast that I was watching recently, because they referenced that there were like 7.3 billion people on the globe. I think we're up to 7.7 now. But the food that was produced in that year would have fed over 18 billion people. How is it that we produce more than twice as much food and yet 50% of the people go hungry?
Yeah.
It's incredible. So a couple of phone calls is all we're doing, but hopefully we can make a dent.
Thanks for bringing that up. I'm definitely going to keep that in mind and see if I can try to make some connections there. What else? Is there other stuff that people are doing to either slow down or resource?
I'm trying to find more things to do that will slow me down. I've been involved with another organization that'll launch tomorrow, which you guys can check out, called artistrescue.org. It's the Artist Rescue Trust. And it's a really great bunch of people that have come together. I got connected through our company that we're working with on redesigning our website, and they pulled together this team to help raise money and then give money to artists who haven't been able to qualify for unemployment, who are missing being on tour or missing showing their art, just because art is such a vital, a vital importance, particularly in times like these. So that's been pretty cool. But I'm feeling very fatigued. I don't know about you guys. It seems like a perpetual sort of fatigueness.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Generally.
I found that at the beginning of the stay-at-home order up here in Washington, because I didn't have to commute, I didn't, and internet's on all the time. I got my setup. I was putting in phenomenal hours of work or pseudo work, and after a couple of weeks, I realized that I was burning it at both ends, and really had to rearrange that. And so I've created some artificial structures. I don't start before 9 a.m. now, and at typically about 4 o'clock, I'll go and find my wife, and we'll enjoy a glass of wine together out on the back deck, and then go, and maybe we'll go for a walk at lunchtime, and so it's being very deliberate in connecting with the people around you, and getting at least a little bit of outdoor exercise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that brings back to mind, I think, this idea of the routine and having structures that you are putting in place to try to maintain some normalcy. I think many of us are like, oh, you got to get up and put pants on or, or not. In my case, sweats. I've been living in sweats, but I think after a while it starts to feel a little Groundhog Day-ish. So I do believe that those routines can be very helpful. But again, I think it's this aspect of, yes, it's important to have routine, but conflating that with, doing it to the nth degree is kind of a different conversation to be had. So, maybe you're not going to go, do your typical 3 to 5 mile run, but doing a walk around the block is fine, or whatever that looks like. Yeah. So I think we're probably at about time. I want to thank you all for joining, and David, thank you for having me as well. I want to remind everyone that tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern or Pacific and 4 p.m. Eastern, we'll have Francesco Barbera, also out of LA, discussing partner and co-founder dynamics from a spiritual perspective. And certainly happy to connect with all of you over LinkedIn or other methods if you're interested. But thank you for having me. Thank you for allowing me to share my thoughts on this and for participating. I wish you all health and wellness in the coming weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Thank
Melinda.
you.
Thank you, Melinda.
Have a great day, everyone.
You too.